pleased to partner with Alyssa Mages and Caitlin Keat, co-founders of Empowering Veterinary Teams. Our topic tonight is Communicate to De-escalate, where Alyssa and Caitlin will use their experience in crafting successful communication strategies for veterinary practice to show you how you can apply those strategies to your own practice. A little bit about our speakers. Alyssa is the Chief Visionary Officer at EVT, where she oversees the content development, clinical skills training, and overall vision of the company. Alyssa has over 16 years of veterinary experience and is a certified veterinary technician. Alyssa's love of teaching and her passion for education, evolution, and empowerment of the support team members in veterinary medicine led her to launch EVT in October 2019. Caitlin is the Chief Operating Officer at EVT, where she handles all things program management, working with people and problem solving. When it comes to tonight's subject, Caitlin is a pro with nearly 2 decades of experience. We're really excited to have you both with us tonight for such an important topic, and just want to say thank you for being here. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Alyssa and Caitlin. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen, for just such a stellar introduction. I really appreciate it. And we're just thrilled to be here. So welcome to Communicate to De-escalate with EVT. We'd really like to thank the VetFuel and CVP teams for having us, and a huge thanks to Royal Canin for their generous sponsorship. So what we're going to be covering today is going to benefit the entire veterinary team. Even though, yes, I'm a CVT and working with support teams, I love us some doctors, and we wouldn't be anywhere without our CSRs. So this is for everybody. As you know, these non-clinical or really more human skills are just as vital as those that we practice clinically. So I am Alyssa, and Caitlin is there with us as well. She'll be popping in, and we're excited to dive in this with you together. So we'd like to start by sharing a bit of our story. So Karen told you enough about me really logistically and pertaining to the veterinary field, but we have a picture of the Taj Mahal up there for a pretty significant reason, as that's where our personal relationship that then bloomed into a business relationship happened. So we shouldn't have met. We ended up on the same plane on a trip, semester abroad, and we were very fortunate enough. I definitely know that I'm, sitting in this lovely seat of privilege saying that I got to travel to India and sit on the steps of the Taj Mahal and pour my heart out to this incredible woman who is my business partner. When we're not hanging out and having a good time, I do have a pretty wacky, wonderful family. So I've got my fur babies. I've got a 3-year-old blind cane corso and a 13-year-old cranky cat. And it matches up fairly nicely with teenage daughter and a 8-year-old son and a husband who puts up with all of us. So that's me in a nutshell. And I'll let Caitlin tell you a little bit more about her.
Thanks, Alyssa. As Alyssa said, we are really...
I got a call. I got 2 calls.
Sorry. Can you guys hear me? I was just muted.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. So I'm very excited to be here with you guys tonight. As Alyssa said, we love talking about communication. It really is the underpinning of everything we do, whether it's professionally or personally. And it's something Alyssa and I work on every day. Being the very best of friends and having a business together can be very challenging and very exciting. So we can't wait to talk to you about it. And a little bit more about me. I don't come from the veterinary world. I have spent most of my career doing program management, which means I'm trying to get a whole host of people to an end goal with the schedule we have and the budget we've been given. And it can be very challenging. And as you guys see in veterinary medicine, the plan doesn't go the way we ever expect it to. But to round this out on the EVT side, our mission, Alyssa talked about how we started, is to educate, empower, and evolve. And ultimately, we want to inspire, instruct, and impact together with the entire veterinary world.
Absolutely. So there's a little bit about us as human beings. We're pretty cool to hang out with. So I'm really glad you're here tonight. But this is what we're going to be looking at. So overview of the topics we're going to be covering is the fundamentals of communication. We all know really what that means, but what does that look like in terminology ways, and how does that feel, especially in a veterinary practice? De-escalation, part one, what does that mean for us and why is it so important? Some scripting. So no, we don't want to be having everything written out for us and we all sound the same on the phone or in the treatment room or in the appointment room, but it's definitely something that's important. So we're all consistent in a way, one way or another. And what do these conversations look like with our clients, with our patients? Yes. Fear free. That is how we communicate with our patients, right? So that is a conversation that's important, as well as how we interact with our teams. Right. And I will say that all the time. That's why we called ourselves Empowering Veterinary Teams, because you cannot work in veterinary medicine and be coworkers. You are too involved, especially if, say, you're doing a CPR code on a, 2 kg Chihuahua. You're gonna be in that space, right? Now we're going to shift over into something that's a little bit more maybe unfamiliar to some of you, but is vastly important, and that's emotional intelligence. And that, because as you have that reaction to the job that we do, it's an emotional one, right? It's not just mental and physical, it's emotional. And there's ways that we can work with that with each other. And then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into de-escalation. This is when it gets nitty and gritty and tough, right? And especially in, the pandemic world that we live in still, and there's a light at the end of this tunnel, but we're still in it. And, energies and tensions are running high. So how do we actually take the definitions and things and why it's important and put it into use? And then the final talking point is going to be efficiency, because yes, it may seem a little bit funny to talk about communication and being efficient, but really, if you can have a conversation with a client in 5 minutes instead of 15, and you don't even have that time to, go to the bathroom sometimes, you're going to appreciate those 10 extra minutes. And then, like Karen alluded to, and Belinda as well earlier, we're going to make sure we save some time at the end for your questions and comments. So this is what it's going to be looking like. And I'm going to let Caitlin take the lead.
Okay, so we'll jump into what is communication. What are the different pieces of it? And there's 9 different C's that we like to focus on. I'm going to put them all up here, and I'm not going to go through each of them because I know we could end up spending all night on this slide. But Alyssa talked about being efficient in your communication, and we'll come back to that at the very end. But it starts here and with incorporating the 9 C's that you see. If you have a message that's muddled, it's going to take longer to get your point across to people. If you don't know what your message is, then how do you communicate that? And this is important, as tonight we're presenting to you. We look at, what do we want to share? What do we want to get across? But every time before you walk into a room with a pet parent, you should know, what are you trying to communicate to them? What do you want them to hear? And what action do you want them to take out of the communications that they've given you? Make sure you're coherent. This can be really hard. We're going to talk about de-escalation, which implies there has been an escalation, and that escalation is in tensions and in emotions. And it can be very hard to stay coherent when your emotions are high. And so that's why tonight we're going to talk about taking that point of escalation and bringing it down so you can get back to the point of sharing a coherent message with the person that you're trying to communicate with. Be courteous. If you can't be anything, just be kind, right? Having an impact on people at one of the most trying times of their lives, you have to take a step back. It's stressful for everyone, but understanding what they're going through and just treating them as a human and assuming that they're not coming from a place of negativity and giving them the benefit of the doubt. You'll find often that alone can help to improve your communication, help to de-escalate the situation. When somebody's coming at you and they're attacking you and you respond in kindness, you can knock them off their feet. Make sure you know what you're talking about. Be credible. And if you don't know, please, 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 please say, I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out. And that second part is really important. You aren't expected to know everything. There are textbooks and coworkers and more experienced folks for you to consult for a reason. And please reach out when you need help. But don't just say, I don't know, and leave it there. Go follow up, find that answer. You'll learn something, and the person that you're communicating with will trust that you are going to follow up on what you say you're going to follow up on. And then the last one I do want to hit on is be creative. Communication looks different and sounds different in every situation, with every person that you're communicating to, with every message that you're trying to deliver. And you might find you've employed all of the other 8 C's and you think you've got this great, clear, concise, coherent message, and the person you're giving it to just isn't getting it. And so think about different ways that you can attack that message, and you can bring it in a different flavor to the person. It might be your wording. It might be your tone of voice. It might be that somebody is a better at email than they are over the phone, or they are more engaged in text. People communicate differently with verbally and through writing. And sometimes it's finding how that person receives the message and meeting them there. So we'll start on de-escalation with a definition. We always like to kind of level set. So many things have connotations to them, and people have different senses of what the word is. So from our perspective, as we're talking here tonight, a de-escalation is that reduction. The D implies taking it down or taking something away. And so we want to, in this case, take away the intensity, reduce the conflict, and pull ourselves out of what could potentially be a violent situation. When emotions are high, that's when people start to lose their coherency and start to make decisions that they wouldn't otherwise make if they weren't in this intensely stressed emotional situation. And that's one of the reasons why it's necessary. When we are in moments of crisis, which often we are, or we're hearing information that we don't know, as a pet parent, and you're hearing a diagnosis that you may never have heard before. And as a TACer, as a DVM, you deal with this every day. And there's a knowledge bias in that you assume that people know things because you know it already. And so sometimes that information, that diagnosis, that injury can be very stressful to the person in itself. So trying to take emotion out of it as much as you can is very important. It's important from a workflow perspective too. It's again harder to get things done when you're coming from a place of heightened emotion. It's easier to get through all the steps in your process. It's easier to treat the animal efficiently when you are at a point of calm or a level-headed team attacking that problem. Stress levels. There's so much research that shows the negative impacts that stress has on our bodies, health-wise, mental health-wise. And so bringing down the stress as much as we can is important. We all have enough drama without trying to create drama, and some people like to create that drama. So how do we step back when we find someone adding to what's already a very stressful position? And all of those and lead back into retention. If you go into work every day and you are leaving emotionally and physically exhausted, it's hard to get up the next day and do it all over again. And turnover is such a difficult problem in high stress environments like veterinary medicine. And turnover costs the team time and energy to teach the next folks that are going to come in. And if you're the business owner, it costs money to train those people up. So we want retention from a workload perspective, from a enjoyable workplace perspective. And this is one of the ways that we can help to keep a cohesive team and keep them working efficiently. Okay, and then for a word break, this is just a reminder of the fact that this impacts everyone. Communication, stress, escalation, de-escalation, it impacts everyone in the practice, and it really can create this fighting sense, right? The cartoon fighting that you see here. And like I said, we all have enough drama without creating it and without letting it spiral out of control. So let's talk some more about how we can continue to improve our communication and help to keep that from happening.
Oh, thank you so much, Caitlin. I love that part about, leading all the way up to retention, right? Because, being in the field for 17 years at this point, I love it. There's parts of it that are challenging, but I don't want to leave. And there's a lot of you folks here tonight that I'm sure feel the same way. It's hard right now. It's heavy. And that's what we're hoping to lighten tonight with talking about these things, because you got to talk about communicating, because that's really what it comes down to, right? But who thought it had all these levels to it? It may seem like a lot, especially all of these little, subcategories here. And I'm not going to lie, it is. But look at the field that we're all in, right? It's involved, it's intricate, it's messy. Anal glands, high, gross. But you're good at it. You're so good at it. And mastering the skill of not just talking, but understanding one another, our patients, our clients, is what takes us all to the next level. So that first point there about styles, controlling, promoting, analyzing, and supporting. There's been a lot of research done about communication, and there's different publications, and there's veterinary specific, of course. But what this is talking about is a generalization, right? So, and none of these may fully resonate with you as I go through them, and that's totally fine. More often than not, we're all a combination of these, and in different situations, you're going to find it applies differently. And you can always tailor your styles depending to the settings you're in. I know I definitely do. I don't talk with my kids the same way that I would talk with my colleagues. And that's not just because it's sometimes more than a PG-13 rating. It's just, they don't necessarily need to hear all the stuff that we're talking about. So let's break down these styles a little bit. Controlling. This is the person that's blunt, straightforward, and they don't mess around, right? They tend to be leaders, people that talk this way, because they make sure they're heard, right? And they're very motivated, dedicated, determined. They are goal-oriented, these guys, okay? Excelling at direct eye contact. Don't back down, so that's that perfect, pit bull stare of like, go ahead, right? Try it. And as such, again, with our pit bulls, they can be seen as being more aggressive. They're not necessarily. It's just they know their stance and they're sticking to it, right? And they know what they're talking about. When we work and communicate with this group, stretch beforehand because they're going to keep you on your toes, really, and make sure you know your stuff, because you can be sure that they do. The promoters, this is a people pleaser. Right? So this is the happy lab, like, yes, let's go for a walk. It's very enthusiastic and people experience oriented. I talk with my hands. I might fall in this category a few times. But we, this group can get more easily sidetracked, squirrel. There's our good friend Doug, as they want to know all the things about who and what they're working with, and ask them personal questions to engage. Is how you really get these folks involved with you, but prepared to answer your own in return, because they're going to want to know about you. Analyzers. All right, these are my detail people, right? And if we're working together, they require a lot of patience. It's worth it though, because this is an in-depth conversation or a presentation when you're working together, because organized, astute, they've got the spreadsheets, they've got this is how it works over here, this is the ECG listing, and this is why. Their nerd book is like this thick, it doesn't fit in their pocket anymore. And they love facts and figures. More on the serious side, they tend to be inquisitive and they look for any solution, right? So make sure you have all of your facts straight when you're interacting with these guys. They're not meant to be aggressive. They're just simply trying to figure it all out. And then you have your supporters. These are your cool, calm, and collected guys, just sitting there chilling. That Akita that's just guarding, just hanging out. Go-to for problem solving, all right? And excellent with conflict resolution, because they just have it all together. Interpersonal communication, and they're open to talk about any and everything. Low maintenance, they're just vibing, and they're easy to approach. And reliable and efficient, so you don't need to over-explain yourself, and definitely don't underestimate them though, because they can be super smart. They just hide it well. And talk to these guys like you talk to a new friend. Easy on the personal pieces and establish the trust. So communication is, it's always verbal, but it's also nonverbal. And that's what we're talking about here in this dialogue section, right? So you have your interpersonal stuff when you're talking with your teammates. Make sure that everyone's included. It's very different from inviting someone somewhere and then actually getting them involved in what's happening. Recognizing when someone's not comfortable. I'm clearly an extrovert, but not everyone is. And I absolutely respect and appreciate that. And that's why this virtual space is fantastic, because if you don't feel comfortable interacting, but you've got a question, there's a chat feature, right? And I will always, when I'm on a one-on-one, be like, all right, not getting a good, like there's no eye contact. Okay, how can I redirect and hone myself in? So being self-aware comes into play here. And then when we're dealing with our clientele, this does need to be a little bit of a different conversation, right? You're not going to be talking to them about what's going on in the back and how disgusting things are and da 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 da. You need to be professional and direct the conversation, right? So make sure that you're making the most of their time and yours, and you're telling them something, you're being informative. And this is also important too, to notice their body language. And that's where this next piece comes in, that final point there of emotional intelligence and DISC. So that is, you know, who we are. You know, it's, you can't separate professional and personal fully, and nor should you. You know, a part of what you do is who you are. And that's also true for communication styles. And so again, because we have a lot of words and we're talking a lot, it's making sure that it, you know, this is what it's going to sound like. It's going to be a little bit different and it looks a little bit different, right? So when we're talking about our controlling folks and our supporters and our promoters and our analyzers, you know, you're going to have those folks that have their clipboards and all of their notes ready to go. And then you're going to have some people that are more soft-spoken, really energetic, and those that are like, okay, tell me how your day was, right? And it's amazing. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And that's what that lovely gal's little speech bubbles, when it pops up, is going to talk about too, is just the different types, right? So keep this in mind the next time that you're out there, you know, talking to your teammates and, you know, the doctors you're working with and the clients. How do you approach a conversation? And in turn, listen to how they're talking and responding back to you. And it would be pretty amazing to hear and to feel what that's like. So those are the types and the dialogues, but you know, who, what, where, when, why, how, and why not, and all of the things, right? This is scripting, not that you're reading off of a piece of paper, but knowing how to approach these different situations, right? And we're not saying to say the same thing over and over again. That's not going to happen, and it shouldn't. But if you're just starting out, or if it's been a day, having something to refer back to is, you know, as a foundation from where to start, it could be really critical for your team's communication success. And especially with our clients. You know, we all have a mixed bag. Those that we love, those that we're like, oh, okay. And those we're like, oh, we're just not going to talk about that right now. And this is human nature, especially in a service industry, that even though we're medical professionals, we still work with people, right? I love animals. That's why we got into this field, all of us. And there's definitely are other reasons too, but they can't drive themselves to the clinic. So we have to deal with their parents, their pet parents. And so they are our customers. So vet med does fall into a service industry. And you've got those clients that make it really easy to not like them. And we trash them. And it's like, oh, can you believe she did this? And da, da, da. And we all do it, but should we? No. Especially when we're on the clock. You know, you got to think of it from whatever angle you need to. And like Caitlin alluded to earlier, like stepping outside of the frustration zone and see things from their perspective. They hopefully are not coming from a place of negativity. And just, we have to take into consideration that we don't know what anyone is experiencing on any given day and what led them to where they're at, right? And you literally can't judge a book by its cover unless it's got a really clear description. But first talk and glance is just your first impression. And sometimes those aren't always good. You know, I definitely had a really rotten first day of freshman year in high school, and we're just not going to talk about it. But that first impression was not one of my finest. So, you know, give people the benefit of the doubt. And take it and keep smiling? No, that is not what we're saying at all. There are definitely ways to establish expectations, set those boundaries, and all the while maintaining your professionalism and a good vibe in the clinic. Not, you know, good vibes only, because that's not realistic, but to try to find that positive spin on things as much as you can. So how does it sound? Is it different for a new versus an existing client? Yep. You always want to be respectful and have open and authentic tones, but it's going to be a little different for them that have known you, like they're a repeat internal medicine client, or they've been there for, this is their 13th chemo treatment versus this is their first visit, right? So do you have a standard greeting? You know, thank you for calling Companion Pet Hospital. This is Alyssa speaking. How may I help you today? Something as simple as that keeps that going, right? And, you know, we'll get into particulars and examples further on, but moving into our teammates, right? How we talk to one another is crucial, but I'm not talking about information exchange here. Yes, rounds are absolutely important. You know, what the client said and those details are absolutely necessary, but you don't want to need to get into all of that unless, you know, especially if it's an emergency, right? You need to just get the instant details and get going. So making sure you have the same tone and consistent format for information transfer and recording it is really what we're talking about here. And then moving over into etiquette. No, this is not like putting the book on your head and balancing and how to, you know, lift your pinky when you're drinking tea. This is phone etiquette, making sure that you confirm who you're talking to, relaying that confident yet compassionate tone to whomever's on the other end of the call, you know, making sure that you know pronunciations. If there's a language barrier, is there someone on the team that can speak that language? Is, you know, changing the conversation instead, that's what the BRWY is there, be right with you, instead I'm going to put you on hold. We all know when we're going on hold, and hopefully your clinics have really good music. I was really happy to actually get on hold the other day, and it was a Foo Fighters song. I was like, seriously, this is great. All right, I'll call more often. But instead of saying, you know, I'm going to put you on hold, I'll be right back, it just makes them go, ugh. All right, so just think about what you're saying. And yes, we have to share information and it has to be detailed, but there are things that it doesn't necessarily need to be shared, right? So we've all had that, you know, that client that tells you, you know, oh, buddy has fleas. Is this what all these bites are? And then they lift their shirt and show you and you're like, oh my God. Yeah. Or you're in the ER at 2 a.m. and apparently that was pants optional. Like, no. But we don't want to do this back to our clients and we don't want to do it to each other, right? So sometimes too much detail is just that. So again, comes back to that respectful tone and demeanor. You're going to establish that healthy and streamlined communication flow with everyone. And gold rule of thumb, if you wouldn't talk to people you care about the way you just heard yourself speak to someone else, time to check it. Okay. The appreciative inquiry. This is one of my favorite things and it's going to come up again. So it's an organizational change model in and of itself, but for communication, what we're talking about, it's the bigger picture. For example, like what do our clients really need from us, or for our team, how are we speaking to one another to benefit us as a whole? Again, all of this depends on where you are, time of day in the clinic, you know, how are you feeling? Is it Monday or thank goodness it's Friday? Are you on the phone? Are you at the front desk? Are you in the ER, the OR? You know, did you get enough sleep last night? Did you have a break today? We're going to work on that. I promise. But these are all factors that you have to take into consideration time and time again. And I'm sure there's a lot of other ones that you could think of. So let's get into some examples right now. What do some of these scripts look like? And as you know, Caitlin, bringing them up on the screen. So thank you for calling EVT. I kind of said that earlier. If you need to look into something, like Caitlin said, never be afraid to ask. And in our line of work, if you make a mistake, you have to tell someone because it could literally mean life or death. So I will investigate this. What is the best number to reach you? And this is mostly for clients, right? I understand that this is a stressful time. Let's both take a moment and I will get right back on with you. Confirm things like, right, repeat it back to them to make sure you've got everything right. And then ask if there's anything else you can do. And we're going to actually talk a little bit about teletriage coming up too a little bit, one of my favorite things, because it's a different type of communication and it's important. And these are all of the questions you can ask, right? If any of you have done an emergency triage or even just had an emergent conversation or call with an owner, these are the things you need to ask, right? And probably a little bit differently, and every practice is different, but this will give you an example of what you can say. Again, it's going to change but it gives you something to refer back to in those moments of stress. So that brings us into, I know there's others, so please think of them. And when we get to the end of it, I want to make sure that we give you some time. That brings us into teletriage. And yes, it's a term that I kind of made up, but it's out there, right? So here we're going to talk about, you know, greeting and coming back to our favorite thing, de-escalation and all that, you know, gathering of information. And then you're going to confirm everything that you've been on the phone with. And then we're going to talk about the 3 R's real quick. Here we go. So curbside. Still in it. Yep. And it's taken our profession to a whole new level and not necessarily a good one in some cases. So how on earth can we do what we do more remotely? You can, but how is the fun part? And this is where the decision needs to be made if it's going to be a CSR or a CVT or an assistant that takes these calls. You know, CSRs, you are more than capable. You rock that front desk and those phones more than I ever could. I've done it and it's a hard job. But it all depends on your practice's protocols, who are going to take these calls. So the fun part, the how, is how you maintain your calm, right? And how to convey to the panic pet parent on the receiving end and how to integrate this within your team, right? So have a designated area, you know, off to the side, or if you have someone that's working remotely, pick up that phone. And then what it's going to go through like is this, determine if whoever you're talking to is a client versus a non-client, pull up the chart if they are, get the essential info if they're not, enter it later. Regardless of client status, you need your pet info, right? So what does that mean? Presenting complaint, top concern, onset and duration, history or new. And this is where it would shift. A CSR can absolutely handle those first few things. Might need to transfer it to a CVT, technician, nurse, or they just take it from the beginning and talk about meds, mentation, and get some vitals over the phone. Talk to them about respiratory rate and things like that. Now it turns into the reduce, reuse, and recycle, right? The 3 R's. No, that's not going to work here. We're not getting rid of information. These are receive, record, and relay. So it's going to sum up everything you discussed above, right? So you're going to receive the info from the client about themselves and the patient. You're going to record everything, because if you don't write it down, it didn't happen. And then you're going to relay the info back to the client for confirmation and forward to the medical team, to the CVTs if you're that CSR, or onwards to your doctors to confirm everything before you give those final directions to the client. That's teletriage in a very small nutshell, but it's doable. And this is something a little bit different that we kind of cooked up, and we're mirroring, it's amazing how communication takes up a lot of talking and a lot of time, right? So we're going to leave these examples up there for you. And we definitely think it's going to benefit you guys to act these out at some point. I know, role playing, rolling the eyes. I can feel it. But it's actually really helpful, especially if you're talking to your new teammates that haven't done this before, right? If you're coming from GP into emergency, or if you're shifting back into GP because you've been in specialty, or you're going into a new discipline, or just you're in a new practice. You don't know what the flow is and you need to practice it. So these are some examples about calling for surgical costs. Oh crap, we gave them the wrong estimate. What do we do? And then we've got a frantic owner on the other side, and how can you talk them through? So we can give you a quick example, because Caitlin's really good at being a panicked pet parent, and then we're gonna get back into the meat of things, and we'll keep going. So I'll be the CVT taking the call. We're gonna do example number 3. And you can have a good laugh at us. And you know what? Let's see how I can handle this from Caitlin. Go for it.
Oh my gosh, Fluffy, she's very old and she's fallen over and I don't know what to do.
Hey, hi, is this Mrs. Keat? Is this about
it is.
Oh, hi, it's Alyssa. I mean, I've worked with you and Dr. Kaczynski earlier. Do you remember we met those times? So she's older. I understand she's been dealing with some dietary stuff. Is that what's going? She's just not feeling right and she fell down? What is that? I don't
really know. She just fell over. We were there earlier and it's not getting better. You have to see me now.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to ask you to do one thing for me right now. Can you just take a big deep breath with me? I'm going to do it with you. Ready? Okay, one more time. You guys on this call, you better be doing it too. It's really helpful. Okay, so tell me again. I know you were just here a couple hours ago and it just happened. She just fell over.
She just fell over. I put her dinner out and she was eating, and then all of a sudden she's on the floor. I don't know what to do.
Is she breathing? Can you see her chest going up and down?
It does look like it's going up and down.
Okay, excellent. Can you put your hand on her for me? Right where her heart would be, right behind her little elbow there. Can you feel her heart thumping against your hand there?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Excellent. So these are really good things. Would she let you look in her mouth? Can you tell what color her gums are? Are they nice pink?
They look a little light pink.
Okay, they're a little paler. Cats usually tend to be a little pale pink, and I'm glad that I would have you talk things through and get a count, but I know I can hear you're really concerned. So I'm glad to hear that she's breathing. She's got a good steady heart rate and she's not white, or her gums are a nice pink color. Let's have you come on back in and we'll work with the emergency team to get you taken care of. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, so that was kind of fun and shortened. And is it always going to go like that? No. Then we know that that's a scenario, but that's what we're talking about. Get into the habit of having these conversations, and you're going to feel a little silly. I know Caitlin's going to hit me later, be like, what did you make me do that for? Because it's important, right? I was that person at the clinic that would come running out with a mannequin. I have a code, and make you do it on the spot, because that's how you get better. All right. So come back to these and definitely give them a try. All right. So let's keep going.
All right. As fun as it was to be the panicked pet parent, it's a lot of P's. Let's pull this all back together. I'm going to get all of the animations up here for you guys. But these are the kind of conversations that we're having every day. And we're going to have different conversations with the pet parent than we have with our teammates. But it's the same underlying methods on each of these. So, when you are approaching a client, we've talked about, be very direct with your information. Ask a lot of leading questions, because remember, you have years of experience with these types of illnesses and symptoms that they don't have. And so the more leading your questions are and the more you dig in, the more that you're going to find out. And that information is always helpful in coming to that diagnosis. Again, be empathetic. Alyssa talked about, you never know what's going on in a person's life any given day. You don't know what's happened leading up to them visiting you in the hospital or even for a wellness exam. So giving people, being empathetic to their situation of what you're seeing and understanding there might be more behind it is very helpful. Be firm. Alyssa, you saw her when I was doing my best panic. She didn't let me fly off the edge. And she does that for me and our friendship as well. But, having that conviction of what you're saying and not letting yourself get run over is very important. Coming back and being respectful. It's always, respect, empathy, all of that, kindness have to be at the very base layer of our communication. And then when we talk with our teammates, we want to show our teammates that we care, and we can show that by active listening. And if you've probably heard of active listening, but it is maintaining that eye contact, listening to, really hearing what the person is trying to tell you. And especially in heated arguments or conversations, or when things are escalating in a client's room, it can be hard to do this. Instead of actively listening, you're formulating your response. You're coming up with the next argument in your head. And if you do that, you might miss a very important piece of information. And so active listening, very important for our team members, and really very important for anyone that we're engaging with. And it's a way to show respect. It's a way to show engagement and support of the person that you're talking to. If you are distracted, then it shows them that you just don't care about the conversation that you're having. Be constructive as much as you can with your teammates. This is always can be a difficult line to walk, but feedback really is a gift. And there's a way to deliver that feedback so that it's helpful and useful. And that can be, from the very heavy feedback conversations to just having a really productive and constructive conversation.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Caitlin. I love that. It can be like feedback heavy, and that's true, right? We can sometimes talk too much about what we need from people, but it's also important sometimes to hear that. So emotional intelligence, or EI, in a nutshell, it's the ability to identify and manage your own emotions and those of others, right? It's not about interaction. It's about management and interpretation, and asking ourselves, can we recognize our own emotions and those of our teammates? It'll help then with clients for sure. But this is really what we're talking about, interpersonal reactions. So that's tying our hearts and our minds together, right? And go ahead and tell me that this doesn't happen every day. Those of you that, a cute puppy walks in, or a kitten, or a tiny little, if you're in exotics, a bunny, or if you're have those gorgeous, horse that comes running through the fields. Even lab animal, come on, I've worked with sugar gliders in lab animal. There's so many things. And when it comes in, what's your initial response? That is emotional intelligence in action. So not only to recognize, but to understand where it's coming from internally, what's making us act or feel this way, and externally, what they could be dealing with, and what that comes out to us as. So remember that appreciative inquiry and that active listening that Caitlin just talked about. This is where it comes in hand here, right? So can we rein in our emotions and redirect and apply them to the task or problem at hand? Are we able to manage or balance these emotions? And if the answer to all of that is yes, then congrats. You likely have high EI. But this is not to get hung up on the stats, right? This is not talking about your intelligence quotient, right? That was super important in school. This is, to recognize the authenticity and the transparency that accompanies this. And the ability to keep our feelings in check and to make well thought decisions, right, is to take that really high emotion and, okay, where's that coming from, why, and think it through, and all while being actively empathetic. Sound exhausting? Yeah, but not if you work on it, right? And you stake it in stages, and that's what we're starting to do today. So this is what it's going to decrease the stress and turnover, because is stress high now? Unanimous nods, ours included, right? So turnover, internal or external, like clients leaving, it's happening everywhere, even if it's not specific to your practice, right? And our ability to make our clear decisions, exhibit positive leadership, increased efficiency and overall performance, and ultimately a boost to our well-being. Yes, let's yes, please. Let's work on this, right? So all of this leads to a more heightened sense of awareness and comfort with ourselves. And that's not an easy thing, right? And that in turn translates to our working relationships. And what's even more amazing, our abilities and skills relating to patient care improves. You know, fear-free methodology in EI, it works incredibly in tandem, and no wonder, because there's a bigger heart that you're never going to find than that of a purring little kitten or a tail wagging pup. So all of these things for self-awareness and self-management come from working on emotional intelligence. And really what it comes down to is awareness and recognition, interpretation, and putting that into action in an empathetic way towards ourselves and in turn our teammates. And just a little bit more about that on this next piece, it's not only internal awareness, but that outer bigger picture that's encompassed with this mind and heart set, right? So social awareness, we need more of this more than ever right now. Awareness of others, and what is that, task orientation? What I'm talking about is, are you willing to put this into action for those that can't, per se? It's going to give all of these social skills it'll uptick, visionary and communication. We're talking about that. Interesting. And then a collaborative approach. I'm a competitive swimmer historically, not anymore. I can't do that. And I need help doing things. So like, hey, Caitlin, you do this. And hey, Sarah, that'd be awesome. Belinda, can you pick up this because you're an expert here, right? So that's another part of it, is recognizing the qualities and skills in other folks, that not that you lack them, but they just have them better, and they can make that, more impactful for everyone. So one of our favorite new terms instead of brainstorming is heartstorming. And it's one that I think you can all relate to, right? As our hearts are just as invested in our work, our patients, and our teams as our minds are. Back to you, Kate.
Yeah, sorry. So Alyssa, there's a reason we went from EI into de-escalation. Having that emotional intelligence of self and of the situation you're in is really the first step in de-escalating. You got to know what you're walking into. So what's the temperature of the room? What's the level of the conversation right now? What's that level of tension? And where do you want to get from there? We talk about intervention. So is it something where we need to tone down the conversation? We need to tone down our own language? Or is it something where the person on the opposite side of this situation is running all over us, and we need to turn up our confidence, and we need to turn up our firmness of our voice and our message? There's also, we talked 3 R's before, and we'll talk 3 D's now. So direct, delegate, or defer. And you've got to read the situation again here too. Sometimes, if we go back to the role play that we had fun with earlier, sometimes it's direct. I want you to do this, and you are going to come into the ER. And sometimes you need to just tell the client what is going to happen and take the discussion and take the argument out of the conversation. But there are other times that might not be the answer, and the communication between you and, we've talked a lot client here, but this can also happen with coworkers or bosses. And so that communication might have broken down so far that any directness that you give is actually going to make the situation worse. And so in those cases, you need to know when it's okay to bring someone else in to to delegate that task to them and to help get things done. Sometimes just a change of face can help to de-escalate and to change the tone and start fresh for the conversation. And some things, especially if they're not life-threatening, you may need to defer until you're out of the situation that's caused that emotion. And sometimes that's the character of the person you're in, and deferring isn't going to help. It might actually make it worse because they get to simmer on it for days or weeks and come back at you a little bit harder. So that's, again, reading and understanding the person, which really comes back to that emotional intelligence, and looking at all of those clues that they're giving you: tone of voice, body language, how close they are to you, and reading that, seeing how they interact with other people. Sometimes there's unfortunately a gender bias in communication, and being aware of who they communicate well with can help you as well. We've talked a lot about from a client perspective, and unfortunately, I think that's where most of these situations come in, especially with the pet parent that's very panicked because their cat has fallen over after eating dinner, or even worse, has gotten run over by a car. And we are not always our best selves when we are in moments of stress and moments of intense emotional struggle. So it is something that you're going to see most often from the clients. Think about your interpersonal relationships and your interpersonal reaction. And again, this is tying together everything that we've talked about to date. It's really tough, I suppose you could, but it's really tough to have a conflict with yourself, right? You have to, my dad always said growing up, it takes two to tango. And so if you can step yourself out of that tango, then that can help to de-escalate as well. Management of self, management of the situation, management in terms of the folks that are actually up your management chain. All of those can be helpful in addressing the situation. Sometimes the person just wants to talk to somebody who they see in a position of power, whether that person has more power than you or not. They feel like they've gotten somewhere because they're talking to the boss. And then prevention. Prevention is always the best medicine, even in communications and emotional situations. So if it's a client that you've seen on a repeat basis, and you can start to identify what makes this person on edge and sends them over the top, try to remove that trigger from the situation. And think about that as well. And we'll jump to the next slide in terms of how you're approaching the work day to day. So workflow. Process is a word that I love to hate, but the more you can write things down and follow them the same way every time, the more efficient you're going to be, the less brain power you're going to have to devote to that. It's already tough enough assessing the situation of this animal that's just come to you and trying to figure out the next step. So do the best that you can so that all of your brain power is devoted to that. And these are all of the places that you can look to implementing workflow and taking out, streamlining and writing down and not having to redo as much of these things as possible. That also helps you, and it helps as you hand off to others. So when you are not there at the front desk taking calls with new clients, exactly how that person is going to react, how they're going to look at the opening, how they're going to call back, how they're going to confirm appointments. And so you trust that the job is being done as efficiently as when you do it. The other thing is downtime. I've read something interesting lately, we're talking a lot about self-help and making downtime for ourselves, which is very important. And we're all bad at boundaries. But I also want to, if we have any practice managers or we have any DVMs out there, I want to make a plea for you too, to make downtime. We think that if we work people harder, they're going to be more efficient. And the data shows that the opposite is true. We reach a point of burnout in a day, in a week, in a year, and then the efficiency drops off like crazy. So think about how can we change our workplace culture? How can we change our incentives to give some relief to our folks, and downtime, a break, a moment to walk away and take a breath is one of the most important things in efficiency and communication and in de-escalation. You may just need to walk away from the situation and give it a moment to breathe. literally give yourself a moment to breathe and come back into it. If you see others taking downtime, respect it. As much as you can, even if it's that coworker who is the best at blood draws and they are out at lunch and you have this really tricky vein that you can't find, try to let them have that lunch break if you can. It may mean you have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit, but that's where we grow the most. So enabling others to have downtime will help them to enable you to have downtime. Understand your team dynamic. This one sounds so easy. You look at how people interact and you think you understand a team dynamic, but there's so much more to that. It's very important to know your roles and to know your responsibilities. So, Alyssa talked earlier in Teletriage, who's going to take that first call? Who's going to take what information from a parent or a client? And knowing that beyond just teletriage is very important. Then you know who to go to for a given situation or a given problem. And you know where your role ends and where you should be asking for help. We also want to look at the tasks that we're assigning. Are they reasonable? And if we're putting tasks on people who it doesn't benefit their skill sets or they are overloaded, then we should take a moment and reallocate those assigned tasks. And we are a team. If you think about all manner of teams, you're out there together, you're working together. And in some cases, you might do something that's not part of your role because the person who owns that piece needs help and they trust that you can do that for them. Delegate. This is another one that's really, really, really hard. We always know our process the best and we think that we're going to be the most efficient at it. But if we never delegate and we never give it to someone else or someone new to the team, then we're never going to grow the team. And you also end up in a single point of failure. And so what that means is, let's say you won the lottery tomorrow and you left practice. Now the practice is falling apart without you because there's no one that can backfill you and no one that can do what you do. And while you might think that sounds good for job security, it also pigeonholes you and means that you are in that role forever or until you find someone else who can do the job. Communicate, we've heard it a lot here, and it is really underlies everything. And relate. You can't always relate in every situation, but even in some of the most disparate situations and experiences, there's a shared piece, there's a shared commonality, there's a shared humanity that we all have, and try to relate to each other, especially your teammates. You spend more time with them than with your family often.
All right. Wow. We've covered a lot, and it's clear that communication, while it starts with us as an individual, it takes into account the entire team, right? Work and personal. And yes, we spend a lot of time with our work and our teammates and things, but that's where another boundary has to come into play. But that's a whole other webinar, right? So knowing what to say when we don't know what to say can really save our rear ends. And the ability to have honest, mindful, and impactful conversations sets the tone for better relationships across the counter and to our clients and beyond the door from department to department, right? What we say doesn't define us, not always, but knowing the definition sure helps us be more confident in knowing what to say. And keeping our emotional intelligence at the forefront, being aware that it's dynamic. Our whole profession is, and it's going to change based upon how we're feeling at any given time. This is all going to keep us better connected and in tune with ourselves and one another. And this is ultimately going to make everything we say and do more efficient, more impactful, and ultimately more. So thank you so much. That is all that we have for you tonight. I hope that was a lot. And make sure that there's definitely those 3 ways to ask questions. Belinda's reminding you through the chat. You can email them as well. And there was a phone number in the chat for you to call if you couldn't get on here in your computer. And then this is how you can get in touch with us, on our website, send us an email. We're all over social platforms. And we are just really excited to be a part of this community. And now you're all a part of the EV team.
Thank you, Alyssa and Caitlin. That was wonderful. So much great advice and things, and it's so easy. And something that you said really resonated with me, which was, we can talk about this and we can practice it, and it is hard. And it is hard, and it becomes easier the more you practice it, but it's often overlooked, or we forget to stop and think about it because we're so busy in our day to day. But you're absolutely right. The more you practice something, especially something like the ways that you communicate and your emotional intelligence, I think is really important. So thank you for sharing all of that great advice.
You're welcome.
There are some questions coming in through the chat. Here is one from Modus. Is it okay to walk away from a stressful situation?
Well, I think, Caitlin definitely addressed that a little bit, and it really depends on the stressful situation, right? So is it where you're in the middle of doing an emergency procedure? Not unless there's someone else to back you up. But if there's something that it's a communication piece, right? And you're having you can't handle it, at least say that, right? Like, I need to walk away. I need some space, and do that. Come back to it though.
And I think that's what's most important, again, to go with our theme, is communicate. If you're in a stressful situation, like Alyssa said, and you're in a surgery, you can't just walk out. Same in an emotional situation. Don't turn and walk out without addressing the person that you're interacting with. In either case, say, I need to step away. I'm about to make a mistake. Can you step in on this surgery? Or say, I need a moment. I need to reset. I'm going to ask someone to come in, or I'm going to be back in 5 minutes.
You just
make
clarified it there. So a client or a coworker. Yeah. And that's absolutely, if you're having that conflict, is just say, look, and even doing that physical thing of like, I need a minute. I can't do this right now. But I would definitely make sure that hold yourself accountable and come back to it. But give yourself that space. It is absolutely okay. Just again, make sure that you communicate that you need to do so. You don't have to necessarily say why, but should be evident with, the facial expressions, how you're holding yourself, but let that person know, whoever it is, like, I can't do this right now. Literally create a boundary for yourself to give yourself some space. I need to walk away. We'll revisit this at another time.
Thank you. One other question that came in was, you had talked in the beginning about the different communication styles. Can people exhibit more than one of those different?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely, some of those resonate with me and some don't, right? I tend to sometimes be a little bit blunt. But then in another situation, I can sit back and just all right, let things happen. It's really going to depend. It's situational, right? You're not defined by these. It's kind of like when we alluded to DISC, when you do communication personality analyses. It's very rare to find someone that's just one. And that goes with how you learn and how you teach. I have to, visually see things. I have to take notes, reread them, and then I have to do a skill, and then I really get it, right? I'm not one modality. Some people are, and that's awesome. You are a unicorn. Well, we're all unicorns, but particularly. So this is another one of those examples where in some instances you need to be more controlling. In other ways, you need to be a little bit more analytical. And then in some ways you're supportive, right? And that's like Caitlin brought up, that's our working relationship. Sometimes she needs to support me because I'm having a minute. And other times I need to just, come on, we got to get this done. And it's really situational and whatever's happening to you or with you at any given time.
Yeah, all of this advice and all of the just learning about it even more, and how you should think about it in different approaches. It's very, very valuable. And I think that I think we can all take something away from the conversation tonight. So thank you so much. I think those were the only questions that had come in. Really appreciate it. I want to thank you both. And I want to also thank Royal Canin for bringing you guys to us, because, without them, we might not have invited you to this VetFuel tonight. So we're so happy to have them as our partners, not just in the VetFuel event, but also in our community throughout CVP. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Belinda. Somebody wanted to make a quick comment. So before I go into closing, may I make a quick comment? I don't really appreciate the controlling designation. It has a negative connotation. As you said, this usually represents your leaders. They are leaders for a reason. you ever thought about that?
I do. I was going to quick type of response, but thank you for bringing that up to the forefront. And I can appreciate where you're coming from with that. I would focus it, not that it's a controlling individual, more so that they're controlling the situation. They're stepping in and being that leader. And this is not coming from us. This is an article that we read that really, for me, resonated because it puts you into different categories. But, you know, for like a promoter, like a people pleaser, not necessarily. I think sometimes that's like a cheerleader, right? So it can have a negative connotation, but I would flip it a little bit. You know, think about your dental x-rays. If you look at it from one way, you see 3 roots versus this way, you only see 2, right? So more of controlling the situation, and they're getting to the point so that they're directing it and they are leading it. And in that sense of control, not that like you do it this way and that's it. It's not meant to be that way. So if it came across that way, that was not intentional. It's more to kind of do it as a foil to the others, right? Where these guys they know what they're talking about. They're going to get the job done. They're going to make sure the situation is under control versus just kind of going with the flow or, okay, what are the, like, you know, let's pivot table the heck out of this in a spreadsheet. Yes, Caitlin, that is for you. Things like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it's also, I think if you looked at all of the different communication styles, it is, you know, they're all different, but it's just recognizing what style you are and what style you're communicating with at that moment so that you can say, okay, this person's going to need something more from me in order for me to get what I need out of this conversation or what they may need out of this conversation. It's just a way to think about how to approach someone at that moment. It's also, like you said, there's different styles. So it's recognizing what's coming to the table at the moment too.
Absolutely.
And recognizing in the situation what's called for, right? You know,
Right.
your point, it is the leader and they're the ones that are going to kind of be the conductor of conversation too, right? They are assessing the situation very quickly and bringing in all the pieces of information that are needed. So like Alyssa said, it's can be controlling in a bad way. Absolutely. That word has a negative connotation, but from our perspective, what we're looking at here is control and really getting that situation under control and getting that communication under control.
Thank you, guys. That was great clarification. And you know, for me, I think that's important to note as well. So thank you so much. I do want to remind everyone that this event is approved for CE for both veterinarians and vet techs. Mara will be posting in the chat in a moment a link out to a form so that you can sign up so we can make sure that you get those certifications. It is also pending approval from VHMA for practice managers. So if you are a certified practice manager and looking to get that CE credit, please also click on that link and give us your information. So as that gets approved, we can go ahead and get that certification out to you as well. Again, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Belinda Carter. I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at Community Veterinary Partners. And just to tell you a little bit about our VetFuel series, it is something that we started last year, and we are very excited to continue to bring content like was presented tonight by Alyssa and Caitlin to our community. And VetFuel is really designed to bring the issues and topics to the industry and to the profession that are important to you. We do have an upcoming VetFuel on July 13th at 7 p.m. with Building Better Teams, Critical Leadership Roles that Improve Teamwork. This event is also CE certified for veterinarians and vet techs, and I believe also for practice managers. And it's actually 2 CE credits, not just 1. And that is in partnership with Boehringer Ingelheim, BI. So we will be partnering with them to bring that event to you in July. There will also be an event in June. It's just not scheduled out yet. You can visit our website at cvpco.com and visit the VetFuel page to see upcoming events. You can also find recordings of previous events on that page as well. So feel free to visit that website. And in the end, just to tell you a little bit about CVP, so we are a community of veterinary practices that are all brought together to deliver on our mission of bringing joy to families by providing the best care possible to the pets they love. What we do with CVP is we support our hospitals so that they can continue the legacies of their owners in delivering that great care to pets in their communities. And the ways that we do that is by supporting our veterinarians and empowering them to make the care decisions for each pet personally at the hospital level. At CVP, we don't have a corporate medical director that dictates care. That really is done at the hospital level. Thank you for joining us tonight. And again, thank you, Caitlin and Alyssa. Please please remember to click on that link that Mara had put into the chat and make sure that you sign up to get your CE. So happy to have all of you with us tonight and hope to see you again at a future VetFuel.
Thank you.
Good night,
so
everyone.
much.
Thank you guys for having us.
Guys, it was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.